The director of Project 2025 has stepped down after facing criticism from both Democrats and the Trump campaign. Paul Dance helmed the right-wing policy blueprint and personnel project, which was backed by the conservative Heritage Foundation. And if it was enacted, it would dramatically reshape how the federal government operates. At least 140 former Trump administration officials contributed to this project, and many of its proposals overlap with Trump's plans for a second term. But the former president has both criticized and distanced himself from it.
I don't know what the hell it is. It's Project 25. He's involved in Project, and then they read some of the things, and they are extreme. I mean, they're seriously extreme. But I don't know anything about it. I don't want to know anything about it.
Now, I should note the Trump campaign appeared to cheer Paul Dance's departure tonight, even though he is an alum of the Trump administration. He served in the OPM office, saying in a quote, "Its demise would be greatly welcomed and should serve as notice to anyone or any group trying to misrepresent their influence with President Trump and his campaign. It will not end well for you." I should note, Paul Dance was supposed to join me on this show tonight, and we hope that he will soon, but he unfortunately canceled our interview within the last hour. Here's Dance in his own words about the project he'd been working on for years.
Our book is a set of proposals by conservative organizations. Donald Trump and his campaign alone set the agenda.
Yeah,
but these are ideas to help them, and they'll pick and choose. But a lot of the mischaracterization now and false attributions of things to Project 2025, it's kind of what Scott's saying. They have nothing else to run on.
Joining us now is Washington Post national political reporter Isaac Arnsdorf, who has been following Project 2025 and its relationship with the Trump campaign closely. And Isaac, in your reporting tonight, you talk about how it became this rallying cry for Democrats, but also was a nuisance for the Republican nominee Donald Trump as he is trying to escape the public spotlight and repair relations with Trump's campaign. Can you just lay out a breakdown for people who have heard about Project 2025, but also just heard what Trump said on what this relationship and what Project 2025 was actually doing?
Project 2025 started before Trump was the nominee, before it was clear that he was going to be the nominee. And the idea was for the Heritage Foundation to get together a whole bunch of think tanks in the conservative movement and present a consensus view for an agency by agency policy blueprint for the next administration, whoever that Republican president was going to be. Now, obviously, and there were actually some concerns that the president of the Heritage Foundation was too close to Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for a while, and that could be an issue. But obviously, as it became clear that Trump was going to be the nominee, and so many of the contributors to this project were alumni of the Trump White House and the Trump administration, and would naturally be the kinds of people who Trump would look to staff the next administration if he does win. And so that's why when the Trump campaign has not been super specific about the details of what he would implement in a second term, naturally, a lot of people looked at his staff, his former staff, and the ideas that were being presented to kind of fill in those blanks and get a clearer sense of what that would look like. And then when the campaign saw that, they didn't want to own the things that were ended up being controversial.
But it's remarkable because a lot of this was, as you noted, done by people who worked for Trump. A lot of the proposals, when you look at them, are things that people in Trump's campaign have actually proposed and suggested would happen if he did win a second term. So I think it's remarkable to see such a conservative group that Trump has praised the leader of the Heritage Foundation, and to now see his campaign cheering, the departure of the leader of this specific project.
Well, right. I mean, look, a lot of people at Heritage and involved in Project 2025 loved the notoriety that it was getting. They loved to see it being criticized on CNN and MSNBC. They loved that there were DNC mobile billboard trucks outside the office. But then when it started angering Trump, and they started getting backlash from Trump about it, that made them really concerned. And so some of what is going on here is trying to have a reset, trying to smooth this over with the campaign, try to get out of the spotlight, offer up Paul Dans as a little bit of a sacrificial lamb, and maybe we can just try to smooth this over. And publicly, the campaign is happy to take that W if it means that Project 2025 stops causing political problems for them. The thing is, I don't expect the Democrats to stop talking about it anytime soon.
Isaac Arnsdorf, it's a great point there. Thank you for joining tonight.
Thanks.
And I have a panel of political experts here to also talk about this. Bill de Blasio is the former New York City mayor. David Poliansky is a Republican strategist who has worked on 5 Republican presidential campaigns and most recently for Ron DeSantis. And also the veteran journalist Gretchen Carlson. It's great to have you all here tonight.
Thank you.
David, I'll start with you, since given what Isaac was just laying out, initially, they were worried that this was too close to DeSantis. But did you ever think you'd see the day where the Republican nominee's campaign is kind of decrying this project and trying to say, we have nothing to do with this, even though the guy who was in charge of it worked for Trump?
Yes. I mean, look what happened at the RNC convention recently. I mean, we saw the campaign essentially eliminate most specific policy platforms in our own convention. And so, look, it's not uncommon, and anybody that's worked in politics in Washington knows think tanks, both on the left and on the right, like to drive white papers constantly and try to influence whether it's the legislative process, the executive process, and sometimes the campaign process. They're just not very good at it. And so in some cases, they're great ideas and suggestions that campaigns might test and push out and take on their own. In other instances, they're extreme ideas that campaigns look at and go, no way in hell we're taking that on. And I think that's what you're seeing here.
Well, and Tom Homan, who was Trump's ICE chief and contributed to this, he spoke at that Republican convention. He was on stage. And this is something that Democrats have used, Mr. Mayor. And I want you to listen to what Vice President Harris said just tonight when she was on the stage in Atlanta.
Just look at his Project 2025 agenda. I take it you've seen it. Project 2025 is a plan to weaken the middle class. Be clear.
Should we still expect to see her using that talking point, you think, even despite Paul Danz's departure?
Yeah, 100%. Look, when over 100 former Trump administration officials helped to write it, and it mirrors so much of what Trump has said over the years, the die is cast. This is going to stick to Donald Trump for the rest of this election. And I'll tell you something, we should be worried about it, not just because of the specific policy planks, which are clearly extreme, but I'll tell you, someone who had to start a government in City Hall in New York City, you take that policy platform, it's actually where you begin. So this is not, I agree with you, some pieces get thrown out, but I want people to be really clear. If only one force has created a platform and given you those details, a lot of energy gravitates that way when a new administration begins. And that's why this should be taken very, very seriously.
Well, and there's no real transition happening right now for the Trump campaign planning if he does win. So this actually probably would have been something they used a lot of, at least in certain bones and structure of it. But when you look at the part of this, the reason we wanted to talk to Paul Dans about this tonight is he helmed all of this, obviously with a lot of help. But there are plans to ban pornography, reverse federal appeal of mifepristone, undo the FDA's approval of that essentially, also eliminate the federal agency that oversees the National Weather Service. I mean, there are these proposals that a lot of these conservatives wanted to actually see enacted and certainly could still happen if Trump wins.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a total shock to many conservatives that Donald Trump suddenly disavowed himself from this. By the way, I think getting rid of Paul Dans does nothing. The Democrats will continue to talk about this because this is effectively what Donald Trump will do potentially if he wins re-election. But what I really want to get the point across is that this is all about independence. And quite possibly the Trump campaign finally realized that they had to reach out to independents. And this is not a way to do it, 900 pages of ultra-conservatism. So independents decide every presidential election. He may have figured out that he has to try and get them in some shape or form. And that's a pretty terse statement coming from the Trump campaign tonight, that they want nothing to do with this.
Do you see it as how Isaac just laid it out, that this person who helmed this was seen as a sacrificial lamb, essentially?
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to do one thing. I mean, the Democrats are going to still stick this project to Donald Trump.